Why don't you sit in the big chair?
Oh, I'm gonna save that for Commissioner Corrigan.
Yeah, let's do that one for Tim. It'll be good. Okay, I forgot how fun.
I know, isn't it really? You got light. Oh, my light.
Are you gonna do kick it off?
Right?
We're taking it up here. Yeah?
No,
Are they
no.
more comfortable than you remember?
Yeah. Well, I took a nap during a water rate discussion.
You did.
Basically. We saved it.
Like 19.
Right?
Like a power.
Feel good?
Seems like I should be up on like maybe
A little higher.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
Get drunk. We got more council people than you got.
No. Yeah, probably more so.
It's always dark.
Would you ever do?
Whoops.
Always dark up here.
Well, you don't have little.
I'm not speaking, I'm just.
No, right, exactly. Yeah, no, Madison.
Yeah. She's your youngest.
No, oldest.
Oldest, okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for coming tonight and joining the Step Up and Serve event. This is put on by the Steamboat Springs Chamber and the Public Policy Committee. We're really happy to see some people in the audience and some people on Zoom. This is being recorded, so you can come back and watch this again later on. I'm just going to start off with a couple opening remarks about the reasons why we wanted to put this event on. Important conversations that set our community's future direction are taking place virtually every day at some level of government. Knowing that public policy plays a key role in our community's quality of life and economic well-being, we believe it is important for the Steamboat Springs Chamber to be at the table as a thoughtful and constructive voice contributing to those discussions across the community. The Steamboat Springs Chamber is the leading broad-based business organization that works to represent business interests regardless of industry sector or location in the Valley. The Public Policy Committee, a subcommittee of the Steamboat Springs Board of Directors, monitors public policy issues in order to represent the membership interests before the community, elected officials, government staff, and other leaders to keep members informed about important issues. Public Policy Committee engages decision makers and encourages participation in the public policy process in order to strengthen our community. As part of our efforts to encourage participation in the public policy process, Steamboat Springs Chamber and the Public Policy Committee highlight opportunities to engage on boards and commissions, participate in candidate forums, and are hosting our second Step Up and Serve event. I know I can speak for Sarah and myself and other members of the Public Policy Committee in the audience and those that can't be here tonight, that this is a passion project for all of us who really believe in this. And we have heard that there may be a current city council member who was encouraged to run from this event last year. So really love to hear that. The purpose of this event is to help those considering public office to better understand the process of running for office, what commitment is needed to be an elected official, and then where do you start, maybe with just civic engagement by serving on a board or a commission. So we'll represent all of those voices here tonight. And thank you all for coming. To get us started, I'll turn it over to Winnie Della Quadri, who is the Special Projects Manager for the City of Steamboat, and she'll give us a little intro to Municipal Government 101.
All right. So I'm more used to standing up than I am sitting behind the podium. So I'm going to do that. And I am here on behalf of Gary Suter, our city manager, as he was not able to be here. What I'm going to cover is really municipal government and why city council matters so much. So the city Springs is a home rule local government. What that means is that we have a home rule charter that our community adopted. It's like a constitution, and it governs how we run our city, as opposed to being a statutory city that is governed by state law. We have local as opposed to state control over issues that are purely of local interest. If there is something that has both a local and a statewide interest, then that is governed by the state. Our mission is proudly serving our community with excellence and distinction. Our vision is we are an innovative and inclusive organization strategically providing outstanding municipal services, and they're on the board. And then our values are service, integrity, respect, teamwork, well-being, and compassion. So the city provides what municipal services are typically provided by pretty much every municipality in Colorado and the United States. We have police services, we have streets and parking lots and parking spaces. We have transit, we have parks and recreation, including open space trails, parks, playgrounds, and recreational services or programs. We have water, we have sewer, we have stormwater. We have planning and code enforcement. We have a clerk's office and we do a lot of licensing like liquor licensing, and we have a municipal court. We also have internal services that are pretty standard that keep all the city running as an organization. So we have the city manager, the deputy city manager, and all of the administrative branch. We have a city attorney and the legal branch of the city. We have human resources, finance, fleet. We have communications, we have grants, and we have facilities and engineering. So all those things that we do internally in order to provide those external services. We also, as a city, have some pretty unique services. We actually operate our fire and ambulance. Often that is done, and more typically that is done by a fire district, but at the city, that is a city department. We have a bunch of high value recreational amenities that are super unique to us. One of them being a ski area. We also have an ice arena and a tennis center. So those things are, I mean, the ski area really, honestly, super unique. And we have a municipal airport. So we not only run your typical city services, but we also have some unique ones. So why does city council matter? Government is by the people for the people. And really what that means is who is the by the people? City council is by the people. They are the ones that are making your top level decisions at the city. They are the citizen legislators that provide the direction, the big picture, the policy decision making, and the lawmaking on behalf of the city. So it is a very, very important role. Our council and city follows the city council manager form of government. So we have a professional city manager that is the how. Our city manager oversees all of the city, hires and fires everybody. And really the staff's role is the how. Council's role is the why and the what. Like, what do we do? And then the staff's role is how do we do it? Council has 7 members. There are 3 districts with 2 members appointed to 4-year terms. And then there is also an at-large position that is a 2-year term. So what this means is that we have 4 open positions every 2 years because the 4-year positions are staggered. Council members are employees. They do get paid a tiny little amount and they do get city benefits. So healthcare and a Holliston Hill family ski pass. And again, council focuses on the bigger picture. What is the city? What are the needs and what is the city going to be doing? There's a lot of balancing that has to happen. And they are the people who make those balancing decisions. We could do a lot of different things and on a big picture level, and they're the ones that decide what those things are that we are going to focus our efforts on. So they are our primary legislative body. They pass city legislation and ordinances. Those are laws. They approve a city budget. They adopt plans. They serve in a quasi-judicial fashion and approve development. They appoint a city. They have 3 employees. They have a city manager, a city attorney, and a municipal judge. And really, again, strategic directions, policy, municipal laws, city budget. That is where they spend a lot of their time. The city manager is a professional position. His focus is on the how, like implementing what council is directing. The city manager is the administrative head of the city, is responsible to council for the proper administration and executive execution of all of the city's affairs. It is the city manager's responsibility to present a budget to council and then to implement it and to appoint and oversee all staff. As well as to implement and enforce contracts, council policies, and legislative initiatives. The other roles, employees that city council has is a city attorney who provides legal services to the city. The city is his client, and then the municipal judge, which runs our municipal court. So that is really what is the bare bones of the city? What is it that we do? And why city council is so very, very important to that. It would be like having a company with no board or a nonprofit with no board, or right. If you're a corporation, you have your executive board that makes those decisions, and that is council. So that's it.
So much, Winnie. All right, before we get into our panelist discussion, I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. If you could start with your name, your current or previous elected official position, why you ran, and how long you held that position. We'll start with you, Mr. Ford.
All right. Scott Ford, member of city council from 2013 through 2019. And I think from the why I ran really came to be simple, is I was looking forward to just having a debate about selling the police station. We sold it. City manager had, in the name of economic development, sold the 8th Street Police Station for $280,000 with the goal of moving the police department into the old Iron Horse Inn. And I didn't think that that was probably, I just wanted to have the debate. Went through, get the petition process, and shortly after I turned in the petition, the individual that I was going to be running against decided not to run. So all of a sudden, I remember that morning that Sonia Macy's, who was the council person, called me up and said, "Hey, congratulations." And you're looking at an individual that I'd never been on, never held an official position on a board. I've been, members of different things, but I never been in that level of leadership. And all of a sudden I was a council person. And you can't get any more ordinary than me. Really, you can't. I'm an economist by trade. And those who are here on this, and I'm looking at, those is that I'm looking at Robin up there. I was always, when we talk about data, I'd go, we don't have to guess this. I'll be back next week with something. But that's how I arrived.
All right. Well, I think you're anything but ordinary for sure. Right.
am
Exactly. Right. So my name is Gail Gary. I currently serve on city council. I am in my first term and the second year of my term. I serve as the liaison to the chamber board, which is really why I'm up here participating in the panel tonight. And first, I really want to just start out by saying thank you to Sarah, to Michael, and to the chamber for hosting this event. And I certainly want to say thank you to those who are here, as well as to anybody, that tunes in later and on the recording. We really appreciate anyone's interest in terms of stepping up to serve either on a board, a commission, or, running for city council. I also want to call out that we do have other council members here. We've got President Robin Crossan, and we've got councilors Dakota McGinley and Joella West. So really appreciate them being here tonight. And I think it's safe to say that if anybody has any questions or wants to talk to them about their perspectives, that they would be more than willing to have a conversation as well.
You have a quorum.
But we are publicly noticed. Right, exactly. And I guess, I ran because, I love this community, and I feel really lucky that I'm able to live here and that I was able to raise my family here. And I, certainly want to make sure that present as well as future generations have the same opportunities that I have, right? I ran because I want to make sure that people who work in this community have the opportunity to live in this community if that's what they wish. I also wanted to just make sure that we keep Steamboat the place that we all love, the reason that we all moved here. We want to know our neighbors. We want to keep that small town feel. We also want to make sure that we preserve our community culture, our Western heritage, as well as our natural assets, specifically, Hallison Hill and Emerald Mountain. So I'll pass it on to Commissioner Corrigan.
Hi, Tim Corrigan, Routt County Commissioner. I first got elected in 2012. I'm in the middle of my third term right now. I think the question you asked was, why did you run? So I think my story is a little bit different. I had a series of positions that I was drafted into. My very first foray into public service was with the Oak Creek Hockey Association, and my kid was playing hockey. They needed someone to go out and clear off the ice and build the boards, and it was pretty organic that way. And after a couple of years, because I was doing most of the work, I got elected the president. And then this is a cautionary note for anybody that does engage in public service. After I was president of the Hockey Association, I was sent over to the meeting of the Rocky Mountain Youth Hockey League, and I was late to the meeting.
Ooh.
And when I walked into the room, the other 7 or 8 guys in there all rose and applauded me and said, "Welcome, Mr. President." I had been elected president of the league. And then I got drafted onto the school board in South Route because in my district, there was an outgoing school board member, and he chased me down and twisted my arm and said I had to do it. So I did it. And then when it came to running for the county commission, the thought had never crossed my mind until the day I read in the newspaper that Nancy Stahoviak was stepping down after, I don't know, 6 terms, 24 years. And I was sitting around wondering, well, who will replace her? And then I went, oh, maybe I could. And that's how I got into this position. So it's been, it really has been the honor of my life to be a county commissioner and frankly, to be on a school board. Definitely some really hard times. And Robin knows well. Robin was school board president with Steamboat the same time I was in Sirocco, about the time of the Columbine shootings. And we really had some tough times. And, you know, oftentimes issues come in front of us, city councilors, county commissioners, planning commission members, where you know you're going to be making a decision that's going to make some people angry. But I think that's counterweighed by just knowing that you're doing the right thing for your community, and you can take a lot of confidence in that. So I would encourage anybody to get involved.
Great. So yeah, I'm Brian Adams. I'm the current chair of the City Planning Commission, and I've been on for, I think, 7 years now. And so, yeah, representing the commission route instead of the councilor route. I got involved probably in kind of the same way that maybe everyone here has kind of talked about, is, you know, the realization that I love this community and I want to be involved somehow. I know that it takes people to make the government happen. And then it was kind of, okay, I know I want to be civically involved. What should I do? And for me as an architect, I have some kind of, you know, inherent job experience with planning and zoning and things like that. So for me, it was kind of a logical next step. And just wanted to be, like I say, be able to help out, to be able to reason through that, and hopefully be able to lend some of that experience immediately to it, and kind of not start quite as from square one, you know, within the code, as I tried to serve. I guess that's about it.
Thank you all. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to our public policy chair, Sarah Jones, to moderate the panel.
Thanks, Michael. I feel like I should say Sarah Jones, 31410 Willow Creek Road. Anyway, so thank you so much for all of you. I know how much time you give already, so really appreciate this, and obviously understanding how important this role is and how much work it is. So that's, I think we really want to be honest in this Step Up and Serve, so people understand what it takes and how to get from here to there. So starting with you, Councillor Gary, can you tell us about your campaign?
Okay. All right. Well, you know, I think the bottom line is it's really about getting your name out there. It's about meeting people, and it's about letting them know about you, why you're running. And it's really important to listen to what they have to say and to get their feedback and input in terms of what, you know, they think, you know, what their issues are. But before I kind of go into my experience in running a campaign, what I wanted to talk about really was a little bit about the process, right?
Yep.
From the, you know, just from the
Perfect.
perspective that there are some just administrative steps that you have to take before you know, run, and need to be aware of all of that. You know, you do need to set up a campaign committee and register with the Secretary of State. Basically, you need to register with the Secretary of State once which you either publicly announce or basically make an expenditure or accept any sort of, contribution. You also, I guess I would also, advise that you would be best served by getting, a treasurer so that you can have someone that helps you kind of track the expenses and the contributions, because you will be required to file reports. You're also, I think, as I mentioned, required to basically get an EIN, an employee identification number, from the IRS so that you can file that with the Secretary of State. And, as I mentioned, we do have the Fair Campaign Practices Act that we each have to follow. And Julie Franklin, who is the city clerk, will have a packet that has all of the information in there in terms of what, you can do in terms of accepting contributions, what needs to be reported, and when it needs to be reported. And then you do, as Scott mentioned, in order to get on the ballot, you need to file a petition. So basically go around and you get the petition, and then you need to get 25 signatures from people in your district in order to get your name on the ballot. And, my recommendation really is that you get 35 to 40, just because, some of the people that may sign your petition may not be registered voters. So that just gives you a little room in terms of making sure that you've got a valid petition. And it's also great practice for, knocking on doors and having that opportunity to visit with voters. Julie indicated that the petitions will be available on August 8th and that they will have to be turned in on August 28th. So in terms of strategies, again, I can give you my experience and, would urge you to talk to other council members, past and present, to get their input and advice in terms of, how to move forward. I think one of the first steps that I would really encourage people to do is to kind of get a core group of people, right? To get what I would call your kitchen cabinet to act kind of as your advisor and to advisors and to, help you kind of, talk about your message and talk about the issues and, and what you need to do to move your campaign forward. And then I think a lot of the next steps are going to be determined by what your campaign looks like, how many other people are running for the seat. I did in terms of the race, I had someone who was very well known in the community and somebody who had been in the community for a long time. So we brought door hangers, right? We also ordered, yard signs, and then we mailed out a postcard. I was to basically highlight some of the endorsements that I had received. We knocked on over 1,000 doors. I think there may be somebody who knocked on a few more in the audience. And then I also ran radio ads, and I ran ads on the electronic version of the Steamboat Pilot. And I raised and spent around $9,000. And then, again, as the campaign progresses, you're going to be asked by different organizations to talk about who you are, why you're qualified, what your background is, and, and what your perspectives are on various issues. And as you, talk to different organizations, those organizations are going to ask you about issues that are specific to their organization, right? There'll also be an opportunity down the road, more than likely, for, a piece in the Steamboat Pilot, maybe the Yampa, the Bugle, right? In terms of, again, just talking about who you are, why you're running, what your top, and what your top issues and priorities will be. So that's kind of just high level.
Awesome.
As I say, that was my experience and recommendations in terms of how to move forward.
Thank you. Scott, did you run?
She was a lot fancier than I was.
I know, because you were unopposed, weren't you?
Yeah, well, the first time, yeah, the first time was unopposed.
Okay.
And the second time, I decided I did a 4-year term, and then I ran at the council person at large for 2. And I kind of felt it was going to be in for 6 years, and that worked. I applaud, Gail's discussion about having a good kitchen cabinet. You need people to keep you honest, as you don't believe your own press releases, or, come up with, ideas that aren't going to work. Campaigns, interestingly here, if you're interested, they're really organic. And what they're looking for is the opportunity just to say, do I know this person? And I think from my perspective, you certainly did the various different, campaigns, et cetera. I was really honest. I had some people would say, well, what are you going to do about this particular issue? And I would say, I haven't a clue at this stage. And I don't. But what happens is people will elect people that they like and trust. And your campaigns, appreciate the 9,000. Combined in my, unopposed, I didn't spend any money. And when I did
Smart.
have a Challenger at that one year, I think I spent $500. Like I said, it was pretty ordinary on it. But it wasn't a confrontational campaign. I think it was, again, people are just looking to saying, kind of almost the golden rule. Can you treat them like they would want to be treated and to hear? And I ran with a concept that I think council people, any of those are interested, ought to be the most accessible elected official people have in their lives. And so you get there. And I used to campaign, walking through City Market, people would stop and talk to me. You'll get stopped and asked. People want to know, and they're going to listen to those answers. That I wouldn't add anything more. You had to do a little bit fancier. I used a prefabricated website. You can order them. I mean, I was like, well, that was pretty easy. And then, did it from that. But people use it. And even as running unopposed, my biggest fun, Sarah, on that was there were two other council people running unopposed that year. It was just the way it worked out. But even as unopposed, I still got more votes than them. And I think that's a good clarification. The entire town votes on all council people. You're not
That's
voting
great.
with just your
That's a
district.
great.
It's the
clarification.
whole town.
Great. Thank
And
you.
kind of take it from there. But it was the campaign stuff sounds a little bit intimidating, but after a while, it actually is fun. It's not like a root canal fun, but
So it absolutely is fun.
it's fun.
Sure, right? Exactly.
Commissioner Corrigan, anything you want to add to that?
Walks the streets.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, as I described my resume, I was pretty well known in the community. I'd had a business for 30 years. I'd been on the school board, hockey association. So I had some name recognition and kind of a traditional path of working your way up to an elected office. But that's not the only way. And I would use former Commissioner Beth Melton as an individual that had really, she had a good resume working for BOCES and as a teacher, but certainly not the kind of elected background and committee background. And she just ran a brilliant campaign. She just got out there, worked really, really hard, made sure people knew who she was. So, and I think Dakota is actually an example of that as well. I mean, Dakota didn't have a resume that people would say, oh yeah, she's, ready to be a city councilor, but you can come out of nowhere and get elected. That's a fact.
Great. Thank you. So Councilor Gary, could you talk a little bit about the onboarding process for us as well?
Yeah, certainly. And again, I think onboarding kind of starts now, right? I think anybody that's interested in serving on a board or a commission or on city council, whether it's this, year or in future years, I just recommend tuning in and attending, either coming and attending in person or, listening via Zoom or, the other ways in terms of the city council meetings and that are happening today, or, the planning commission meetings or any other board or commission that you're interested in. Just, again, just to kind of get a flavor of the issues and the process and how it works. Certainly participating in City 101 is a great way to learn more about the city and, the role of council as Winnie described, and certainly how the city operates, but that's not a prerequisite. And I think as has been stated here before, you get lots of different backgrounds in terms of who is running for city council or, who's serving on the board and commissions. And, and again, I think, we certainly want to, encourage anyone who's interested to, to step up and serve and participate. I also, would encourage anybody that is interested in running for city council to sit in on our budget review process in October, when the department heads and city council and city manager go through the budget. So you get a good sense of what's happening prior to the election. I would hope that, and I would think that Gary Suter will do what he did for us, who he's the city manager. And basically he he set up an orientation, a candidate orientation that we could all sit through. He talked, a lot about, and much more in depth in terms of what Winnie talked about tonight, in terms of the city's role, what the processes are, the mission, vision, values, our strategic plan. Talked about, again, our form of government, we also, talked about our process, right? And how we do business. And then we heard from each one of the department heads, and they gave us a kind of a brief overview of the various different departments. And I will say that we also received a pretty thick binder that we, could take home that had a lot of the, different documents that we could use for reference on a going forward basis. Then once we were elected, we also had the opportunity to really sit down with each one of the department heads and talk through in more depth what each of the departments do, what's the makeup of their staffs, what are some of the challenges that they face, and then just, to ask any sort of questions that we, had at the time. We also got the opportunity to tour the water treatment plant as well as the wastewater treatment plant. And then we also heard from Dan Foote, our city attorney, in terms of our, rules of order. How do we run our city council meetings? And then I think, I just wanted to mention that it's certainly been my experience that each one of the department heads is more than willing still to have a conversation with each one of us in terms of as we're facing issues. And if we have questions, they want to hear those questions, and they are more than willing to answer the questions and give us as much information, certainly me, as much information as I need to make sure that when those issues come before us at council, we feel like we've got the information that we need.
Great. So I think highlighting that you don't need to be an expert on every single topic,
Right.
to run for city council. There's a great onboarding and resources.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, I think that they'll, set the stage to make sure that we're successful, and then provide the opportunities for each one of us to pursue whatever additional information we need. And, and it's also a lot about talking, also to the community in terms of getting input on, the various issues as well, as was mentioned.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Ford, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you could talk about time commitment, city council meetings, other
When
meetings.
I first started council, I was intimidated because you get basically the equivalent of the Los Angeles area phone book for your packet. And I was, and I think Kathy at the time, they issued us iPads, and like we were supposed to figure out how to use those. But what happened is, let's say the packet's pretty large, and it's intimidating at first. And I, at the very initial part, Brian would spend time reading planning documents, et cetera. Over time, if I had to put a number to it, probably something in the, depending upon what issues are at hand, but it wouldn't be unreasonable to look at 15 to 20 hours a week was what that would take. Most of it would, some of it was involved. You'd be on committees and you'd have meetings, and you'd have also the council sessions. But in the end, you learn how to be a little faster. It's a good way to look at it. On the planning commission stuff, I was just sharing this with Brian, I can't read a topo map. I don't know what they're doing on that stuff. But what would happen is if it was the planning commission voted 7-0 or 6-0 on something, I didn't spend a lot of time reading that. And that's been kind of my advice to other council people that have asked me. I want to be aware of it, but most of it's going to be on the consent agenda and move forward. But planning type activity is probably about 70% of what you do. It's what's in the packet. The other part is just accessibility in time wise. And, we did at that point in time, tried to find ways to make sure that we had, contact. I'm glad the council continues with Coffee with Council. That was fun. And the farmers market, because it just, again, should be the most accessible people that you have. And people will talk to you about certain things. And the other part is, I think from a time would be that I came more comfortable with just trusting the process, Sarah, of the seven of us.
Mhm.
And you'd listen to the ideas. You have to listen with intent. And there was, I'd make a statement, and Catherine's out in the audience. She heard me say this a couple of times. You'll land on an idea and I'd go, man, that dog will hunt. And that'll work. That dog will hunt. It'll work. But just in trusting the process. Probably a bigger part of the commitment is that this impacts your family. It does. And I had a very understanding spouse, but she had to loan me for a while, for 6 years to council. And I wish you could say you didn't take it home. You do. I use Sherry as a sounding board for me. And she was very honest, sometimes going, I wouldn't frame it that way. Catherine, she's not quite as good as you. I'm sitting saying like, what were you thinking when you said that? But trust in that process. And again, you're not up here, I think, is trying to be you don't need to be a know-it-all. You just need to be somebody that looks like they're willing to roll their sleeves up, and you're honest in your particular approaches. If I were to run again, would I do anything different? You can't really lose by the more input that you sit down with citizens on. You just can't, and you come away with just what I would say what makes this place special is that we all seem to know each other. And that's kind of the fun that you make those connections. And so I would just say if I had to do anything different, I would have probably done more public events. Yeah. And that worked.
So for both of you, do you feel being a commissioner is a little bit different? But as counselors, do you think someone with a full-time job could do it?
You'd have to have a very understanding boss.
Okay.
Yeah. And, in many ways, and again, this is probably not the right analogy, but it's not a whole lot different if you were like in the, one of the military reserves. You got duties that are there. And if your boss is, understanding, I was self-employed. Jason was an attorney, self-employed at this stage, on this. And I can tell you that it does impact the amount of time that you have for your other businesses. So it's not without cost, but the benefits far outweigh the cost. And I think if you started to focus in on, I just don't have time. I don't know, Gail, it seems like you start to auger into not a self-pity, but going, I can't afford to do that. And you don't want that, opportunity, because there's always going to be, fundamentally what happens is decisions are made by those that show up. Sometimes they're skilled and sometimes they're ordinary.
Great.
Yeah. And I would certainly echo that. I think it's easier, right, in terms of being able to put in the time and make sure that, you're prepared and have the opportunities to be, liaisons to the various different organizations. If you have a bit more flexible schedule, and certainly, right, also have a consulting business and, have the ability to have that flexibility. But I would say I certainly wouldn't want to discourage anybody that has a full-time job to run. I think, we've got counselors who are juggling different jobs and also have, full-time job and jobs that kind of require a presence. So, I would hope that we as a council would certainly be and I think we have been able to be accommodating in terms of working with everybody's schedule, because we want that diversity. We want that input. We need people on council that are working in this community and bring that perspective to this discussion.
Thank you. Great. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Corrigan. What is the most rewarding part of public service for you?
People return my phone calls.
Exactly.
I don't think you've called me recently.
Yeah. I think any of us that run for public office, I don't say this in a bad way. I think we all have a certain amount of ego. If you don't, you probably don't belong in this business. You'll get crushed by it all. Many of you, people everywhere, really have strong opinions about what's going on in their community and what's going on in their country. And I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but I am one. I think people spend way too much time commenting on Facebook and TikTok and these other platforms. And generally you are preaching to the choir. You're just talking to people that agree with you. You're not convincing anybody. So once you have the opportunity to get elected and serve in a position of authority, frankly, you're exercising authority in this position. It's pretty gratifying to not be just a commenter, but to actually be a decider. It could sound a little cynical, but there is something gratifying about actually having a little bit of power. And then I would say the other the truly gratifying thing is the opportunity to develop relationships with people across the spectrum. And so, I mean, the relationships that I've had with city councilors through the years has been awesome, with elected officials at the state legislature. You know, when a United States senator comes into town, he goes out of his way to say, hi, how you doing? It's good to know that what you think and how you address issues is important to other people.
Great, thank you. And now balancing. So if you could speak to, how do you create that balance, the kind of the public-private life balance? And if you have any advice.
Oh, I've got all kinds of advice, man. I thought Scott kind of touched on it a little bit, is that I had the same experience, you know, starting out, and especially my first 2 years as a county commissioner. I was also still on my school board in Sirocco, and I still had a pretty significant business I was trying to run. So juggling all of that was really hard, but you do get more efficient at it. You adapt. In my business, I did some more delegation, working with county staff. I was able to recognize that I didn't need to know everything, that there were people that I could trust. I also had 4 kids at the same time too, 3 teenage daughters. So that was its own set of challenges. But now I'm pretty protective of my weekends. I give it my all Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, it had better be pretty important to get me to drive into Steamboat Springs. I live out south of Yampa. So, I'm pretty structured about that. And then I would say the other thing, I spend a lot of time outside. And I think that would be general advice I'd give to anybody, whatever line of work you're in. Go outside, look around, look at the trees, look at the flowers, talk to your dog. You need that kind of balance.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, back to you two. So this is your opportunity to speak to future counselors. What do you wish for future counselors, and any advice you would give?
Go ahead.
All right. Okay. Well,
I'll
thank you.
follow you on.
Right. Exactly. Well, I really think to be a high performing council, there needs to be respect for each council member and the perspective that they bring to the table. I think that there also needs to be a willingness to collaborate and really to be good partners, with our community members, as well as, the various local businesses and our, local community organizations. And I really believe that the strength of our, city council and future city councils is that if we do have different experiences that we bring to the table, and certainly different perspectives. And so, I think my wish, right, and for future councils and, advice really is that whoever is elected is open to those different perspectives, and that they're, willing to, listen and willing to get input, and, willing to have a debate on the issues, and then really just to make informed decisions that, best serve this community.
Perfect.
And I would probably add to that is part of it is keeping it in perspective. You can't this is somewhat a little bit of a heady position. You get to sit up in the big chairs.
I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does feel
right,
good. These
exactly.
chairs are awesome. You know what I mean? I used to lower Pacino, the chairs so he'd be lower for the whole meeting. Go on. It doesn't mean that the issues that we that are going to come before council people are not serious. They can be.
Mhm.
I always tried to keep in perspective that some of the issues that we were dealing with, other communities would just trade for. So we were a little bit in a fortunate position to be able to do it. Kind of as an anecdotal story, I remember that we spent as a council probably 6 months, over a 6-month period, talking about playground equipment for West Oak Park. And there were people that were very passionate about playground equipment. And, I kept going, the kids just want simple stuff. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be, it's not a gateway into the whole area. But it was great to keep that in perspective and to a certain degree, bring your own personality to it.
Mhm.
And it's okay to have a sense of humor. It's okay to laugh with council. The other part of it is a key component with even with other council members in this is to treat other people kind of like how you'd want to be treated. Because there'll be people that will stand before council and, you know, and it's scary. You're up here and there's 7 of us. Well, really, no city attorneys over there and city managers taking notes. It's intimidating. But it always comes to the standpoint that it's just an ordinary conversation that has to, you know, that takes place, and respect the people that give the opinion. You will get criticized. And it doesn't mean that you have to develop a hard shell. You just do get criticized. I think the other advice that I would do is the 7 as a council person sitting up here, you're a part of what I would call Team Citizen.
Mhm.
You're not a part of Team City necessarily. And Team City is going to be the city administration and staff and everything else. And usually you're very much aligned, but you are part of Team Citizen. And there are times that you have to remember that you're Team Citizen and push back, you know, that would happen. It's easy to always just take, you know, it's not saying that the staff wouldn't have good recommendations, but occasionally you have to push back. And that's hard because you're going to have to do it. And the other part of it is at least it's a little bit like baseball. When that inning is over, the issue's done discussing, you're done. And you can go on to the next one. And the councils that I've seen that aren't very effective kind of hold grudges into the next issue. And you just can't. And I was had a very good mentor, Sonia Menzies, taught me how to, you know, be better at that, because you just move on to the next issue. And sometimes you're 6-1 and you're the only dissenting vote, but it's like, next, we're ready to go. I've done what I wanted to do. But my advice with that was just bring your authentic self and be, and with that, understanding that the 7 of you kind of have each other's back. I liked your point that you have to trust each other.
Mhm.
And as a result of having that kind of good debate, better ideas emerge that nobody thought of. And you go, that's cool. Yep. So I was comfortable with that. And Tim, I enjoyed working with you on the joint law enforcement facility. That was just, you know,
Fun.
that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. But so, you know, you get to work, I think as a council person, you get better connections and with other folks. But again, it comes that you are a part of a group of 7 but you still get to be yourself.
Yeah. And I guess I just wanted to add, I mean, that it is really rewarding. I mean, and it's certainly, you know, an honor and a privilege to be able to serve on city council. And I think as, you know, Commissioner Corrigan said too, right? I mean, it is an opportunity, right? I mean, instead of providing input, to be able to take the input, you know, it's a lot of fun actually to talk, you know, to have those conversations with, you know, the community in terms of providing input, but then being able to, you know, to be able to be part of the decision-making that moves our city forward and addresses the issues that we see facing our community.
Yeah, I think this is a good point. I think the debacle with the post office when you plugged in and I did too, and had some very difficult, frank discussions with people from the Postal Service. And then we started ratcheting up the pressure, contacting the Attorney General. And I'm not sure that we got the situation fixed, but I think we made a difference.
I know you guys helped.
Right. Still got a little more work to do, but we'll get that done too.
Thank you. That's awesome advice. Great. Okay, Brian, we're going to turn it over to you. So obviously, I think we were talking about this before, like Planning Commission is kind of the pipeline to council. There are many counselors who have been on the Planning Commission.
It's not a prereq, but you come to the table smarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to have you here as well to talk a little bit about Planning Commission, kind of that commitment, experience to be on the commission. And you've been on, what'd you say, 7 years. So if you could tell us more about that experience.
Definitely. So the amount of time, I mean, in a busy month, you know, we have 2 public hearings and 2 policy work sessions. And those policy work sessions can range from 5 minutes to an hour and a half. And, you know, the public hearings can range also from 5 minutes to 3 hours, right? Yeah, there's a lot of range there, but kind of a more of a a set expectation, I think, of time, right? There's not a lot of additional boards. There are some things, for example, I'm doing the APCC right now, as kind of a contributor with some council members and county commissioners as well. So yeah, so it can kind of range on how much time, and sometimes it's even less if we don't have a lot of policy discussion going on. What else was I going to say? So yeah, so that's kind of the typical time commitment from kind of what you guys were speaking to as far as, is it the pipeline to council and things like that? Obviously, I don't know if it's pipeline to council. I'm a planning
No
planning
pressure, no
commissioner.
pressure.
I like your
So I'll take your guys' knowledge on that. But I think I've kind of approached, at least my participation within planning is, there's two very different ways that we behave on planning. There's a quasi judicial part, right, where we're actually looking at criteria and basing answers on specific criteria and projects that are looking to be developed in that kind of level. And I think that's a very technical natured thing. And I, on that side of things, very much hope that whoever wants to be on any board or commission, right, whether it's Parks and Rec or planning or anything, that if it's something criteria based or that kind of thing, if you don't know, I hope you know soon. And I kind of look at it as when you were talking about, I forget who to give credit for, the kitchen cabinet idea, right, of who you're kind of looking to help make those discussions. I kind of take my role as we're kind of looking at that. That's why you don't have even longer meetings, is because you're not doing all the Parks and Rec, you're not doing all the planning. And so if we are taking that off your shoulders, so to speak, at least to a certain extent, I hope we're really good at it and I hope we're knowledgeable. So I would just say anybody looking to join a board, that there's a lot of experience to be gained, but I hope there's a lot of participating and knowing the knowledge about it as well, because that's really kind of the function that we're serving. And not to get too long-winded, but the other side then is policy, right? When we get into the work session, now we're kind of getting into a little bit more what you're talking about. Of course, a lot of it's recommendations to council, right? In a commission line, but nevertheless, it's bringing more of that perspective that you were both talking, all three of you were talking about, is bringing that unique perspective, that unique personality, and how do the 7 of us even, or 8 of us, when we've got a full team, to talk about anything that's policy related that we're trying to help recommend to council. So it kind of brings both facets of that. It's kind of interesting.
And looking to you three, I mean, Commissioner Corwin, you talked about your past experiences, but do you see from past boards or commissions or even different organizations that you work for experience that you feel was helpful in coming to council or to the commission?
Oh, yeah. I mean, no question. And for me, it was really important because I ran a construction business here in town for a long time, and I was the dictator. Everybody did everything exactly the way I told them when I told them to do it. So it was a little bit of a change of pace to start serving on boards when I realized that the other people got to have a say in the operation. And yeah, you guys touched on the developing of those relationships, and nobody gets anything important done all by themselves. You always have to work with somebody, and the outcome may not be exactly the way you wanted it. But I think in retrospect, most of the time, even when I didn't get my way, I was able to look back on it and go, yeah, this was kind of an okay decision that we all came to. So yeah, that part. And I think that also speaks to the fulfilling part of the work. It's not all just hardcore. We're making a decision here. Yes, no, get out of here. You end up having an in-depth conversation, and the best ideas come forward. And generally, I mean, I think sometimes city council hasn't always made the decisions that I thought were best, but generally it works out. And that's the way good institutions work.
Yeah, and again, I would just reinforce that it's certainly not a prerequisite, right? I mean, in terms of having specific board or commission experience, but I definitely think it's, it's helpful, right? Just from the whether maybe it's a nonprofit board, or just any sort of experience in terms of kind of, understanding the flow of how a meeting works and the, and
Robert's
kinda-
rules.
Right, yeah, right, exactly. And, just exactly the rules of order, and certainly, the process. But again, I would just encourage anybody who's interested to listen in to the commission or the boards that they're interested in serving on, or, or listening into city council. I mean, I just really think that it's important that, people are authentic, right? And do bring their perspective as well as their experiences to the table, and are here to, with the best interest of the community in mind.
Awesome. Did you want to add anything,
I'm
Scott?
good.
Okay.
I learned that in council too. Sometimes you just say, I'm done.
Ditto.
Thank you so, so much. I think we're going to turn it over to see if anybody in the audience has questions, but we really, really.
Please ask
appreciate-
us a question.
And Michael's gonna, please, if you do, use the microphone. So this is being recorded. We want to make sure that everybody can hear the question.
Ask
Leslie, I'm sure
mean,
you've got a
hard
question.
questions. That's what we like.
Go Leslie.
So can you tell me what the upcoming positions are?
Great question.
Upcoming, yeah, what the elected positions.
Yeah, what will
No,
be
there's
open
not.
on council? Is that what you're asking?
Or any elected. I know there's like a school board position coming up, and I think there's next year county commissioner. But I just don't know if you know what.
I'll take a quick stab from the county's perspective. If you go to our website, there's a link to all of the various boards. I mean, I don't know how many boards are comprised within the county, but it's got to be 15 or 20. Purchase of Development Rights Board, the list goes, cemetery boards, Yapa Valley Airport Commission Board. There's tons of them, and there's always openings, and that's a great resource to go to that website. Those are not elected positions. They're generally appointed positions.
And I was gonna say, I would say that's the same thing for the city. If you go to the City of Steamboat Springs website and look at all the boards and commissions, you can find out what, what's out there and what the openings are. In terms of city council, as Winnie mentioned, we have, I think, 4 open spots. We talked a little bit about this in terms of the city. We have 3 districts. There are 2 representatives from each district, and then there's a representative at large. But even though, it's basically in terms of being from the district, it's more you live in that district and run from that district, but the entire community votes on all of the different city council members. And so we do have 2 council members that are term limited. So there will be, 2 kind of openings. I think the Councilor Briones, who's in the at-large position, that's a 2-year position. The rest are all 4-year positions, has indicated that he's not going to run again. And then in Council District 2, Councilor Bacino's up for re-election and has stated that he will be running again.
So that is in even numbers, even numbered years,
Oops, I didn't hear you.
even number years.
No, so 23. So this year, November this
That's
year,
why we're
exactly.
here.
Yeah, sorry, we're in the odd years.
Don't have an extended election. How refreshing.
Well, and Leslie, you got a good question because city council members are term limited. They can serve 2 terms. It doesn't necessarily have, they can serve 2 consecutive terms. And then, they roll off. I look at it as there's always an opportunity to have, positions. And so, there's the openings, and the hard part, the scary part at the very first is you pull your petition. You kind of did that. And then you got to go put it on a clipboard and you go up to people and you go, I'm running for city council, or, and you don't have to vote for me, but will you sign it? And then you kind of educate them on, are you a registered voter? And then they'll go, no. Well, it's been nice chatting with you. but you work through the process of making sure you get the sufficient. And probably the biggest thing that trips folks up is that they moved. You know, they were at this address and then they moved. And so you have to kind of look at it. But once you kind of get the 25 signatures done, it felt like it was going to be horrific. With you do about 35, so you don't have to go back and fix it. But then Julie says, yeah, you're good. And then the tear starts. That means I'm going to be named as on the ballot. I'm going to be, Julie, make sure that your spelling is right and everything else. But it's a little scary on that side of it. But yeah, it is not as hard as one would think. It's scary because you're out there, you feel like you're in 7th grade, like, oh, here's my, I'm running for
Me for the
class
team.
president, but it's just different. And then all of a sudden, you can get the signatures and it's the more fun. The actual fun happens when you begin to have the campaign. That's just kind of a housekeeping thing that's a little bit of a pain, but it's necessary. You have to pull signatures?
No, not, I did for the 3 terms I served on school board. I had to do that. And you're right. The first time you do it, you feel a little embarrassed.
You do.
Right? It is a different kind of a feeling, and then you have people say, really, you're going to do that? And you wonder if they're being critical or supportive. It's hard to tell
But
sometimes.
they can sign your petition, but they don't have to vote for you. So you don't have that worry. And the nice part about it is that we have a tendency in this town to do something that's a little crazy. It's like, how long have you lived here? Like that makes you a better person or something. I'm not too sure, but it's a willingness to serve. And that usually is it. And I think if you've got a willingness to serve, you're as local as some people who have been here their entire life. And I always ask them when they've been here their entire life, it's like, what choice did you have when you were born here?
I mean, just by raising your hand and say, I want to run, you've got some pretty good odds going for you. I mean, oftentimes it's really hard to find people to run for these positions, and you'd be surprised. I mean, I was surprised when I started out in 2012 on the county commissioner run, but just by virtue of announcing, I was in a really small field. I mean, Catherine, I only really had one opponent in the caucuses early on. It wasn't like I was running against 5 or 6 really well-known people. And oftentimes, one of the things you should remember if you ever think about doing this is announce early, because the quicker you get your name out there, the more other people will go, oh, I don't want to run against her. She'll do a fine job.
And the county commissioners, you're every uneven years.
Correct.
You go with the general share.
And we don't have term limits in Routt County.
So nice lady
Most counties do, but
Nice lady from Boston. Thanks for moving here, I guess. So what would you have as questions for us?
You talked about like citizen versus city, and I'm wondering if this role also gets politicized along any party lines.
Fortunately, no. I think what happens, and it's a great question, it was like, is it partisan based? And the answer to that is no. The county commissioners do run, they go through a caucus process and, appointed on that. Council's not. We certainly come with perspectives, and, it's not to the standpoint that people could fill, your sentences in, but every once in a while you can come with your perspective and you work on surprising people when you vote a different way than they thought you were going to vote. But it's not that. It is not, fortunately, kind of depending upon council, and to a great degree, the tone that council president, and Robin's not here, she stepped out, sets, is that they just don't tolerate that. And so you just go, hey, you know what I mean? We know what your thoughts are on that, but we're talking about this. And it's the ability that you can just walk away from it. And you'll get criticism like, how could you compromise on that? When you're going, that's called the political process, and council is not a platform for performance. It's not, you have to be cognizant that what you say, this occasionally got me in trouble. The paper will pick up. And then Catherine would call me and go, did you really mean that? But It's not, and it's not confrontational. Very rarely did you run into confrontational stuff. And I kind of felt on the areas that were going to be confrontational, if I could understand the issue well enough that I could explain it to a 7th grade class, they didn't have to necessarily agree with it, then I understood the issue. Because some of the stuff you deal with is hugely complex. And oftentimes you'll get kind of a, walk in the grocery store, and really what helps is going, hey, good job. You get that. It's more of that than you get people that are going to take you on. But it's your access. If people feel they have a voice, that does.
The other thing that probably ties into that I've always liked, at least as long as I've been a voter here, is that it doesn't say the party on the voting ballot either.
No.
So whether or not you're getting a vote has everything to do with what you've said at any of those open town halls and who you are as a person and all the information that you can garner, not just, I know that party
Right.
thing. And I've loved that. I've felt more connected to the people I voted for in town simply because it doesn't exist. So I think it's been great.
It's a little different for the county commission. We do run under a party banner. And part of that is because we're involved with a lot of issues at the state level.
You are
And
state level.
inevitably, there are some partisan distinctions between Democrats and Republicans. But I would say on the local level, very, very little of that. The land use decisions we're making, the way we organize the county, the way we get our work done, the way we work together. I've worked with a couple of Republicans and got along fine. We would disagree on some things, but for the basic everyday business, there's very little of that. And I'd like to follow up on one thing Scott was saying. And one of the gratifying things about being an elected official is you're the one that spent the time studying this stuff in detail. And it is really, I find it really gratifying when a constituent says, explain this to me. How does this work? And if you find a way to articulate in a way that they can understand and they walk away going, oh, I get it now. That's really gratifying.
Yep.
Except on
Are you
except
thinking
on
of running
property
back there,
tax.
Dakota? Want 2 seats?
At time. No, I was curious what advice you might have for someone who's interested in running on if there's a big topic of interest in
Mhm.
the community at the time that they're running.
Well, I'll jump in on that one. I was running because I just, at that point in time in 2012, the police station was in the process, was under contract to be sold. And I just didn't think that was it wasn't well thought out, all in the name of economic development. And I've been involved in that. And so in many ways, when I wouldn't call I was a single issue kind of candidate, but that was the issue that brought me to the table. The important part is that whatever that issue is, it typically is not going to last that long, whatever it may be. And so you have to be able to kind of pivot and roll with the balance of the process. And I think if you come to council, and I think, to your credit, this is so you and good for you, come with just an intense level of curiosity. Because you get to learn things, and Tim is right. You get the inside track because you got more information than sometimes when the decision gets to be made. But if you have an intense curiosity, that results in you having a better understanding how things fit. And just really, I come away with just how very, very special this is. You guys just got back from CML, and you had some of those council people. They can't even be in the same room with each other, and we can all kind of hang. I hope that's how we keep this town. I hope it is. You can be disappointed in your council members, but you just never embarrass them. That's no point in that. So, yeah, would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Right. I mean,
Just
I
don't
do.
embarrass me.
No,
Okay.
I won't embarrass you. Exactly. No, I mean, I think it is. I mean, I really think it is, about asking questions and seeking out the community's input, seeking out, advice from folks in terms of other people on certainly the issues, certainly when, when we all ran, the 2 big issues, I would say during the last election, was housing, right? And was the short-term rentals. And and again, I think we, had a charge from the community that we needed to, address those 2 issues. But again, I think as you said, I mean, I think there are always new and different issues that come forth.
And you're doing good on that one.
And when they do, you can get so much information like you're saying about it. I mean, I knew how to draw housing before short-term rentals came to pass, but I didn't know the policy behind, I wasn't experienced in what is the impact if you do this kind of decision or this kind of decision, what is the overall impact? And then you're forced to research it and ask people and find out. And then all of a sudden you become more the expert of it by the time you have to make any votes as you did, or even as planning commission did, but you can really become more of an expert than you started.
And again, we have a great staff with the city in terms of, lots of knowledge, lots of experience, and certainly open and willing to entertain any sort of questions to help inform and make decisions.
And Winnie, more than once, sometimes look on the history of the town, knows it. And you would be able to ask Winnie, how did we get from here to there?
Yeah.
And you'd be, have it, taught that way.
So it's 6:30. So I want to be respectful of your time and how much you've committed. So thank you. And thank you all for coming. I'm going to say, hopefully that you guys will be here for a few minutes if people want to come up and ask specific questions. So thank you again. Michael, you want to close this out?
Oh, Michael.
Thank you all again. And thank you all for attending. Thank you so much. I'll end. I heard Commissioner Macy's say something really insightful during a chamber board meeting the other week. And I think it was a really good way to end this meeting. And she said, I don't know if she came up with this, but what she said was the person that you're waiting for is you. So on that note, and good night.
It's a great one.
All right,
you go.
thank you.
Well, thank you for being, this is fun. I got to sit in the big chairs again. This is kind of cool.